kids who are born from LRA, they range from as young as a baby and grow up with these guns in their hands. And by the time they reach 5, they have their own pistols given to them. And these are kids who will come asking to punish someone. By punishing, they mean shooting someone. If you do a crime while with the LRA, these are the kids you should fear the most, because they don't have the ability to think for themselves. They only have the ability to believe what they're told, and they just do it without thinking. They don't even know what killing means anymore. I was born in December 89, from Gulu, northern Uganda. My family was living, and my mother still live in the same place, 2 hours away from the city center. So it was pretty much a village. And, you know, as a child, when you're born in the middle of a war or in a peaceful environment, that becomes what you know, and that becomes your version of a happy childhood. So I would say I was born in a happy family, happy neighborhood. Hearing gunshots every day became a part of my childhood and defined what happiness was then.
And what were you like as a young child?
I was full of energy. I would tell you I was a very energetic guy, but also in my childhood, we played rebels versus government soldiers always, where you get your stick and pretend you're a rebel soldier and the other team as government soldiers, and you're pretending to fight each other, or sometimes all kind of rough games.
What was Joseph Kony fighting for? What did he believe?
So Joseph Kony comes from a family of the late Alice Lakwaena. Probably you read about her, a woman who was believed to have fought a spiritual war against the government of Uganda, with the definition that, you know, the world is sin and she was a messiah. There were just a lot of beliefs. And that is why his movement was called Lord Resistance Army, because they believed that they are fighting a holy war, a war that was cleansed by God and spiritually blessed by God. And he used this tactic to also motivate a lot of people to join this movement. So basically, I would say Joseph Kony and the Lord Resistance Army, after failing, or after starting as a demonstration and facing a lot of resistance with military equipment from the government soldiers, they realized that they were losing men, they were losing potential fighters, they were losing people who believed in them before, because no one wanted to die. And that's how they resorted into abducting children who could be easily manipulated, brainwashed, and used to fight. And by then, even the government soldiers were recruiting children, because there was not yet, I think the UN resolution on protection of children's rights had not yet been ratified. So both sides were recruiting children.
Were you and your family afraid that this might happen to you?
For me personally, I wasn't that afraid, because, you know, when you see your parents, you feel like you have the entire world around you and there's nothing that can harm you. When you have loving parents who tells you every day that everything is going to be okay, then you learn to believe that everything will be okay, and it doesn't matter what anyone else say. So I wasn't much afraid, but for my parents, I could see daily on their eyes that it was a daily struggle to protect us, to protect my sister and I. Sometimes the LRA rebels, when they're coming to attack, they throw out leaflets. They remind you that they're coming to attack, but they try to make it look as more professional that they're coming to attack the government soldiers, not civilians. But on a number of occasions, when they announce they're coming, they don't come. The days they don't announce, that's when they surprise people. And so at some point, my parents said we need to start night commuting, where we leave our village. Since it's 2 hours away from town, that is quite some distance. We would walk 2 hours walking, as vehicles were not many in northern Uganda by then. So we would walk 2 hours to the city center, where, you know, the rich people are available and they could afford security. They could hire the militaries to protect them. So we sleep on their verandas or in different whatever places, including the hospitals and the hospital beds. You save yourself for the night, and then the next morning you go back home. So I did that with my parents for some times, but eventually, of course, they got tired also walking every day to the center and back. And on a number of occasions, we were lucky. Our families never got attacked by the LRA. They would come as close, but they never came to our families. So we felt, okay, maybe we don't have to do it every day, but when we do it, when we hear that they're coming, then we do it for the entire week or even a month. So this one unlucky night, we were sleeping home. It started raining around early evening. It was already raining. So we said, my father decided that we all sleep home. And we ate 2 grass-starch arts, one for my parents and one for my sister and I. So as we were sleeping, then in the middle of the night, we had a knock on the door. And I used to sleep without a shirt or clothes on. So it was typical in northern Uganda for children of my age. So they took me out, told me to put on my shorts. I put on the shorts, and then luckily my shirt was by the door. I also took it. And then they kicked my sister back inside the house and locked the door on her. And then only to come out, my dad was already also outside. So they tied me on the waist with my arm behind my back. And my dad was also tied on the waist, but then his arms weren't tied. They had some foods. Our beans were looted from the sack, so my dad was carrying the beans. But we were not the only one. There were so many people, so many children that I was tied along with. They just connect the rope with your waist, but your hands are always tied behind. And then for my father was in a different line with older men, and they were all carrying something. So we walked throughout that night and we eat in the forest, and when it was coming clear, that's when I could see that it was actually a big crowd. It was just a lot of people and a lot of children too, and many that I knew from my village. We were abducted the same night. So we waited during daytime as we only walk at night due to fear of getting into ambush from the government soldiers. And so the second night we continued walking, and I found because I was bare feet, I couldn't walk so long, so I found myself crying for help. And when my dad tried to break loose to come and help me, that's when they took him away. And you know, from that very moment, the first feeling in my heart was that I needed to revenge, because I saw the 2 men who took my dad. And you know, they didn't kill him far away from us. So I just wanted a weapon. And for me, and now as an adult, I realized that was also part of their tactics. Because they make you angry to have one yourself. They make you angry to fight, to be in the front line. But I was more angry to avenge the death of my father.
Really sorry about your dad.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of years blaming myself for his death. But then it reached a part where, you know, they keep telling you, and the counselors, your father, your mother, and everyone tells you, it could have been you or him. I wasn't close to my dad, to be honest, but I would have wanted him to live for my sister at least. And that's something that, you know, I will live with for the rest of my life. And so, yeah. So they moved with us to South Sudan to a village called Pajok, where it's not far from the border, and that's where they were camped. And so from there, we underwent trainings, where one of the training that I remember so specific was where they dug tunnels. And in these tunnels, they paired us the newly abducted children with the old children. And so in this tunnel, you who is newly abducted is expected to go down through one part of the tunnel and crawl under the tunnel till the last part. While the child soldier you are paired with has a gun and is firing above the tunnel, labeling the tunnel. So in the tunnels, they paired us with the old child soldiers who were already trained. Some of them were born from there. And then they ate a gun and they were firing above the ground level. So the commander training you is timing. You have to make it within a specific amount of time. I don't know how many minutes or seconds it was timing us, but if you don't make it within this time, you would have to restart. And the tunnel was not deep. So any part of your body that gets above the ground, you get hit. And basically a direct translation from my language to English is a narrow escape. In case you get into a face-to-face contact with the government soldiers, they call the enemies, then you have to know you have to escape from the smallest possible place. And so after that, after the trainings, we had our ceremony where we were given guns. And that was the first day that I also saw Joseph Kony myself, when it came, and it was an handover ceremony, handover ceremony, some sort of where you get your weapons and you officially get ordained as a child soldier. And you know, I don't know what was going on in my mind that day, but after getting this weapon, I didn't even have the feeling of revenge anymore. I was more scared of maybe touching a part that would accidentally end up shooting me instead of someone else. But eventually, as time goes by, that gun became a very close friend of mine, because I realized there it was basically like everyone changed so fast. It's impossible to trust any child. So when my gun, several times we were sent within the neighboring villages in South Sudan as well, where they sent us to loot food, bring back to the camp, or medicine. And you know, with your gun, like I said, my gun became my best friend, because if I point a gun at you and I want something, you'll give me. But in South Sudan, it's more complicated than that, because these people also have guns. The local civilians have guns. Sometimes you point a gun at the wrong person and he is already expecting you. And that's how you lose your life. So I was lucky enough, after a few weeks with them, I tried my first escape, where I was put on a night watch, where you patrol the center overnight. And I tried to run. I had my green gumboots and my military uniform, but they were also heavy. And as we are running, it's also making noise. And the boy who was on the watchtower heard me, blew the whistle, and walked the camp. So they ran after me, caught me up. And I was brought back to the camp, tied up, and the next day was the judgment day for me. So they had to decide what to do with me. And of course, the decisions was always in the direction of firing squad or giving you a beating. Where I was tied on a V-shaped pole. And after they consulted, I don't know how they reached the agreement, then I was released and put down for beatings. And the beatings are always on your elbows and on this bone on your legs. So he left me with 2 big scars here. You're most welcome to see later. It's not the proudest thing I'm having in my body, but it's also a reminder of most times I feel like I defeated them, because I left with a scar, but I'm still alive. So since then, I just had to forget for a while that I have a mother that I want to tell what happened to her husband, or I have a family that's waiting for me, and I had to focus, because I needed my life more than anything else. I needed to be alive. So I had to focus. Whatever they told me to do, I was always as quick as I could. I was always fast in the line just to win the trust back again. A friend of mine from my village, that I wouldn't mention the name for his own security, advised me, if you want to live here, and he had been there longer than me, he said, if you want to be alive and live here alive, just do whatever they tell you. They will love you, they will give you, you will get closer to the commanders, and maybe you'll win yourself some freedom. And it worked. Through that, I was made a second in command of my unit, and in a unit we were 15 child soldiers. There's always a first and second in command. I was in battlefield with the government soldiers on 3 occasions, where these 3 occasions, a lot of times people would ask, and I don't know, maybe you have it in your question list too, that if I ever kill someone. I've been asked this question, I don't know, 1,000 times, and I would tell you, I don't know. Because when you're fighting the government soldiers, the only thing that you see is their bullet passing ahead of you if you lay flat down. You don't see where you're hitting.
And what tactics of indoctrination were used on the children around you? And do you believe that some of the other children were fully bought into the ideology that they were fighting for?
You might find this funny, but I actually had my first marijuana when I was with them, because this is part of a remedy. They told you it kills your pain, it makes you more stronger, and it makes you more resilient to pain. So they would give you, and we grew marijuana with them there too. So drug was part of the strategy that they use and give children. I don't know if you call marijuana drug or not, that is not up to me to judge. But there were different forms, and of course, as a child, if someone come and give you sweets and all this and tells you right now I will be like your father, and this is what Joseph Kony did, I'll be like your father, I will make sure every one of you get whatever support you get when I become the president of Uganda, and you can support your families. And we are from poor families. All we want is to give a new life for our families. And if you can be the breadwinner and somebody promise you a job so big, this goes down in your mind as a child that, oh yeah, we are going to win. I'm going to change the lives of my parents. But for me, it was different. the parent I'm supposed to change the life is gone. So that could not work. Because if they'd left both of my parents alive, probably I would have thought different too. So I better not think of that.
What did the LRA say they're fighting for?
They say it is a holy war. They even promised jobs to these children, me personally. They say, you know, when this is a holy war, we are not just fighting us alone, it's God behind us. And you know, I hated God at some point because I felt if God is allowing this man to fight and kill children, then it's a ugly God. Then it's a God that I don't want to respect. But I realized it was just one of the examples of how people misinterpret the reality of spiritual beliefs and God in its own existence, because there was no God, and this war had nothing to do with spirit.
Child soldiers generally, and the ones fighting for Joseph Kony, how old were they?
With that, I will tell you, you find every ages. The younger they are, the more traumatized they are, the more they can do anything. Like I said, some of these women, the young girls, as young as 12, a friend of mine, she's also an advocate now. She has been moving around the world doing the same thing that I do. She was abducted at the age of 12. And at the age of 15, she had her first child. And when she was 23, she had 3 children with a low-registered army commander. So these kids who are born from LRA, they range from as young as a baby and grow up with these guns in their hands. And by the time they reach 5, they have their own pistols given to them. And these are kids who will come asking to punish someone. By punishing, they mean shooting someone. If you do a crime while with the LRA, these are the kids you should fear the most, because they don't have the ability to think for themselves. They only have the ability to believe what they're told, and they just do it without thinking. They don't even know what killing means anymore. They just know that if I shoot a gun, I punish somebody, and that is it. There's not emotional connection to that. And there are kids of every ages with the LRA. And
what was the, I suppose, like collective feeling amongst you and the other children? Did you have relationships with them, friendships, or were you?
I had only one friend. I mean, 2 plus my gun. But the other friends were, you can't trust anyone there because you don't know how traumatized they are. The one you're going to tell them your secret of escaping might be the one reporting you to the camp leaders. So you cannot trust anyone. And I think this worked for their advantage, because if we had united against them, we were much stronger than even the military soldiers combined. We were like the most fearless group of fighters that I think I've met in my life. A fighter who has nothing to lose is probably the most dangerous person. And these are some of the children born there. They had so little to lose because their world is inside there. There's nothing outside. Whatever is outside is just noise. Whether they shoot, kill, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything, because they are taught that their family is just in this, and these are the holiest people. Everyone else is a sinner outside the camp. And of course, when you are also abducted and newly abducted and you're brainwashed, then you become a part of the group. You may not get to their level, but you will slowly also start getting so violent, and it becomes a part of your culture in a way. Yeah.
And with your escape, I know you said there's 2 options, punishment by beating or would it have been death. Did you see other people killed for escaping?
Once. And that's what scared me the most, because even before I tried my escape, there was one firing squad that happened. But I've heard stories that happened that I didn't see myself, where they walk over you and if you're not dead, they make a round and walk and walk and walk. And this is something that many media outlets, including the BBC here, quoted in the early years as well, which I can't verify that because it didn't happen in my face. Maybe I was out of the camp when it happened, I don't know, but I didn't see it myself. But I believe it happened.
And knowing that and still choosing to escape, you must have been so terrified.
I think first I thought that was the worst mistake I could make after I was caught, because before I didn't even think of the consequence. I just only had the imagination of my mother, and that was enough for me to forget everything else and just try to run. Because I imagined how much she would be so happy to see me and to just have me home instead of losing both my father and I thought that was something that would have made her really happy. Indeed, it made her really happy when it eventually happened. But I didn't think deeper into the consequences that it comes along with.
How long in total were you with the LRA?
Specific time, I can't really tell. As you know, every day with the LRA is like a year. But I think it was for around 3 to 4 months, not longer. Yeah. Every single day that I thought of my family and I couldn't do anything, and that for me was the worst time. It was always a very emotional time but you can't show emotion when you're with them. You just have to hold back. And you have to be a soldier. You have to be strong, and you can't let them know that you're thinking of home or you're missing somebody, or you just have to smile in between everything. Yeah.
Would you like some tissues?
No, I'm okay.
Sure? Yeah.
I just drink a tea maybe.
Yeah.
It's just always, when you think of family and my mother, and she's a very...
She must be so proud of you.
She is. I am more proud of her than she is of me, because after my father, I thought, wow, how is she going to carry on alone? One time when we were sent back to northern Uganda to abduct, and we had specific 2 orders: get more food and abduct women. And these women, of course girls, this is how the commanders get to choose their wives. And so we went and found this one home where we decided we want to check if there's any of the 2 things we're looking for. And my commander told me, you stay home, stay out, command the other boys, 8 other boys, the 9 of you stays out, provide us security. I go with the 5 boys inside. So they went inside this hut, and then I commanded these boys to stand in distance and make a circle around this home. And without thinking, this is how I escaped. And I ran. And early morning, I went as far as I could and just sleep, because I knew they would run after me and try to get me back. And early morning, I went to the nearby family. Of course, I was having still my gumboots, my uniform, and I was bleeding a bit from the cuts from grasses. And when this woman saw me, she just collapsed. Because first thing, I don't know what she had on her mind, but I had a cross of bullets on me, and then, of course, my gun. So I thought, she just thought I was there for her life or something in that direction. But then luckily, after when she got better, and I put my gun down, of course, I removed the bullets and gave her my gun and said, I'm not here for that, I just want help. And that's when she connected me to the government soldiers who got me back to northern Uganda. And even from the northern Uganda barracks, the first question I was asked is if I wanted to continue fighting with the government soldiers. Of course, the only thing on my mind was to go and see my mother. And that was the only thing I told them. I want to see my mother. But before they sent me home, there was 2 centers in Gulu. There's Gulu Support Children Organization and then World Vision Center, where they first send you for rehabilitation before they send you back to the community. So I went to the World Vision Center, where they gave me a lot of counseling again. And, the first time in a really long time when someone told me they love me, that they believe in me, and this all sounded like a foreign language, because they didn't mean so much at that point. But eventually, with more time, as they introduce you to the Bible and teach you the value of life and God's love and God's way. And through that, I learned also a lot and slowly started to believe and love myself again. Of course, after some time, I can't really remember how long I spent there exactly. My mother came and took me, but even when I was still there, my mother was allowed to visit me. And the first time I saw her was, I think if there's a special day that I've had in my life, then that was the most special day.
You mentioned when you escaped and you were taken to the center and you got reunited with your mom and your family. How did you feel at that time?
I honestly, the first time I saw my mom, I can't tell you how I felt. I was just overwhelmed with, it was like a bittersweet moment. It was just sad to see her and to tell her all what happened. But it was also, and she didn't want to hear it. She just wanted to hug me and just tell me, you are here, and that is all that matters.
Do you think you were suffering with PTSD at that stage?
I couldn't tell. I was suffering from a lot of things. I was violent. And on a lot of times, I got this scholarship. They moved me to Kampala to a new school among new tribes. I didn't know their local language, but I was happy because it was my choice. I wanted to get away from Gulu. I thought I could run away from the past. I didn't want to see all these things. I wanted to just be somewhere where nobody knows that I was a child soldier and all this. But I thought I trusted some new friends I met and shared my story. And then the story became a school story where people call you Koni. Koni means coin, but because their accent is different from ours, they say Koni. And then they call you murderer and all this. And then I got in a lot of fights and physical fights. And then they expelled me from the school. So they moved me eventually to a new school where I never opened my mouth about my life to anybody. I never shared. It doesn't matter whether I trust you so much or not. I just kept it to myself because I didn't want to go through the same thing again. And then eventually when I got back home, my father was gone. My mother had no job, and my father was a sole provider for the family. So that means that my education was gone. My sister's education was gone. My mother expecting a new kid. That kid was going to be born without a father. So for me, that whole feeling rested back on me because I kept telling myself that if I didn't cry for help, my father would have maybe lived for my sister to see her. So I felt that I owe my sister a lot. And since then, I made it actually a promise to myself that if I fail to ever continue with my education, I have to do whatever it takes to make sure that my sister studies, because my dad would have done exactly that. So luckily, where I started night commuting, I never slept home again because I knew they might come. And if they get me the second time, knowing that they have my history already, that could have been really, really bad for me. But then eventually, one group of three young men came to Gulu. They met me at the center like any other. They told me, they even asked me what I would need first if it was like what would mean more to me, food or my education. Of course, I told them food because I knew they would lie and disappear like any other. So food, at least if they give me there and then, I know at least they fulfill their promise. And they gave me both. They supported my family with what to eat for as long as it takes. And then they disappeared again. As soon as they left, they contacted a local lady from Gulu that they were working with. And the lady came to my place and said, the boys you met last time, they sent you school fees. And for your sister too, they said you can go back to school. And I think that was a turning point of my life. They put me back in school where I will not go through the details so much, but eventually I also told them that I had a passion, I had a dream, because I left a lot of my friends back there, a lot of my friends that they're fighting a war that they didn't understand at all. The war that had no meaning, that had nothing to do with them, but to fulfill the political wills of people that don't even know why they're fighting. So I made it upon myself as kind of a goal to keep speaking for them so that the world could hear that they still exist. These child soldiers still exist. And these people don't have a choice but to fight. And if they had a choice, they would be in school like I had the opportunity to. So that's where I started speaking and reaching out to as many organizations to speak for them or to at least let them know that there are some children who need help. I continued my education on the side, and in 2013, I graduated with a bachelor degree in economics and applied statistics. Then went back home where I worked for an organization called Unified for Uganda. And I was a mentor to 32 kids. And part of the job was to follow these kids home, make sure they're okay. If they come from abusive families, try to involve their parents. And most time I use my experience. I share my story to open people's eyes, including the parents of these kids. But after that, as I was working for Unified for Uganda also, I got in touch. I met a lady, a really young lady who had gone to Gulu, doing a teaching practice to, go and explore also how the children learn in northern Uganda in a war zone and how the learning is different from where she came from in Germany. So we met in 2014, actually March to be exact, and we became really good friends. And then the rest is history. She's my wife now. 10 years later, we are together. We have a really beautiful daughter, 2.5 years old. And every time I look at my daughter and then I compare with the life that some kids are living through, then I tell myself that I'm a really proud and happy father. And that motivates me even more, that if my child can live so free and so happy and she can dream, then the other children deserve the same.
Do you feel like your childhood was stolen from you?
I know it was stolen from me. It's more than just a feeling. I know it was stolen from me. And that's why, for me, it's very important that they don't steal it again from other children. They took it away from me for a reason that didn't benefit them, didn't benefit me either. And they are still going to continue taking it away if we don't rise up. If we can put a priority on children and not just look at a specific race, we just say children and are born innocent, irrespective of their color, their religious beliefs. No one is born believing in anything. We are taught all these religious values when we are alive. So if we can campaign for all of them to have a peaceful childhood, irrespective of where they come from, who they are, whether they look like whatever you can imagine, I think it would be a really peaceful world. And it would be a world that carries a lot of love. Because if we can afford to hate, I'm sure we can afford to love 3 times more. Because hate carries a lot of weight. You really need to have a lot of, it lives in you and is always bothering you, but love doesn't cost a thing.
What message would you want to share with other children in conflict zones who might be at risk by being recruited into armed groups?
It's never over. It doesn't matter how dark it looks like, there's always going to be a light. It's never over. There's a saying in Acholi that says, when it gets so dark in the middle of the night, that's when it's about to get clearer. When you reach your darkest point, that's the breaking point. It's your choice to break or to carry on. And if you can be strong enough to carry on, you're going to live in the light forever and ever. Sometimes it feels like the end, but there's always hope. If you can hold onto this one thing, hope, then there's nothing that can defeat you. With hope, you can achieve so much. I had hope, and that's why I'm still here and telling you that in hope, there's every possibility.
If you could go back and say something to that young boy all those years ago, on the night that you got taken from your family, what would you say?
Wow, this question, like I said, I've done this for over 10 years, but no one had ever asked me this question, actually. So this is quite interesting. I think I'm proud of the boy, and I'm just going to say this with very bold, straight eyes, that I'm really proud of him. Because I think I saw a lot of his friends gave up on the way. A lot of them died. A lot of them wish they had the same opportunities that he has. The resilience that he had in him led him to the man I am today. So I think I have nothing but a lot of pride in the boy that he was. And I wouldn't have changed a lot of things. A lot of times people ask me also, would you have wished never to have been a child soldier? Definitely I would have wished not to. But wishes are just wishes. So right now I accept it's my life and it's a part of my life that I want to use in the most positive way as possible to change something. When I look at myself, I look at a really lucky guy, if that even means anything. I just think I'm so lucky, and I have every reason to smile and live happy. I am a happy guy. I'm sad when I watch all what happens in the world, but for me personally, I think I'm a happy guy. I have a family of my own that loves me, and I love them more than I don't know. I have my family in Uganda. I think I have everything in life.
The bodies of people being fed to these dogs and dog eating them and sitting, being frightened, knowing that if they see me, they will, bite me. I think I was so terrified.